So this is the Cryolophosaurus quarry. This is the third season that we've been digging up this dinosaur. Where I'm standing is a trench that we've been defining around the main block that contains the bones here. Out towards you, where the camera is actually where the first find of bone occurred, where the skull of Cryolophosaurus and its femur, the thigh bone, were found in 1991. Now the overburden back here was taken off in 2003 using dynamite, and that's cleared up this area so we can come in and trench, so we can dig down and around and start defining the block that we want to remove piecemeal from this. Although we have about half the skeleton of Cryolophosaurus already in the lab in Chicago and in Rock Island, it turns out there's still a lot of this animal left to be excavated. As we started working on this, we discovered that we have about 30 bones exposed, and a lot of them appear to be articulated. That is, they're still joined together in the natural way they would have been in the animal. So we have probably somewhere between a third and a half of the animal still in the rock. Right here, what you're looking at is the front end of what remains of the animal. This is a vertebra in cross-section, part of the backbone. It sort of looks like the cut you'd have through a rack of lamb. Here's the body of the vertebra. The small elliptical circle actually marks the neural canal. That's where the spinal cord went through. And you can see some of the processes that come off towards the ribs and towards the top of the vertebra. This vertebra actually connects to a series of others we already have prepared in the lab. We can sort of continue through the rock and we'll actually find other pieces of vertebrae, so we think they line up. Towards the bottom of the large block we're defining, we have some elements of the girdle and limb bones. We think this might be part of the pubis here, this large bone defined in front. You'll see we've actually marked them with magic marker, and we've given each of these bones numbers. The reason for that is we're going to actually break this huge block into smaller pieces. So before we actually started excavation, we mapped out the location of all these bones relative to each other in all three dimensions, so going both as a flat grid on top, but also their depth relative to a baseline, so that we can reassemble the blocks when we get back to the lab in Chicago. The large element that we see here is the end of a limb bone, presumably either the top or the bottom part of the knee of Cryolophosaurus. And right above it here, we have some of the vertebrae from the hip region. A string of at least 3, perhaps 4 vertebrae in line here. So here are those vertebrae from the hip region, and as we move back, we see a number of very thin bones emerging in a straight line back from the hip region, all in line with each other. These are the numbers 24, 25, and 26 on our quarry map. And what these appear to be are some of the processes coming off the tail vertebrae. So we think we have the tail in line with the hips, and the hips themselves line up nicely with that vertebra all the way towards the front of the block. So we think we have a very substantial section of the vertebral column here preserved of Cryolophosaurus. The rock at the site is extremely hard and can only be quarried with power tools. We use several gas-powered and electric jackhammers and rock saws, but the work is hard and slow. Some of our gas-powered tools use 2-stroke gas and oil mix, which we have to mix on site to fit each individual tool.
What Pete's doing right now is, with a hammer drill, drilling down some holes to define a large block on the back corner. Then what we'll do is drop some feathers and wedges in those holes. You can see these tools in our online website in the photo gallery. We'll put those wedges and feathers in, pound them in with a sledgehammer to get the rock to break apart in the preferred direction we want. We'll come in here a little closer, and here you can actually see how well this block is starting to be defined. Still a large piece, so it's a huge undertaking, and Pete's working on that back corner of the first large block we're going to take out. So we're going to take out a bunch of chunks like that, hopefully in pieces about 300 to 800 pounds.
After we break off a block of fossil-bearing rock, we carefully lift it off the main block. The blocks are then hauled either to the helicopter landing site, as in this sequence, or if they weigh more than 300 pounds, we carry them to a ledge where they can be loaded into a cargo net that will be attached to a hovering helicopter. large blocks were moved to the edge of a ledge below the quarry and transferred to a cargo net. Helicopter lifts in this terrain are risky. Pilots must constantly keep an eye on the mountainside, gauge winds, and keep an eye on our mountaineer Peter Braddock, whose job it is to hook the net to the helicopter.